your eyes, you want to look at each graph and what you're seeing, and then we're going to throw on the love dub on top of it. And you're going to sit here and pretend you're on drugs while looking at all those graphs. It's going to love when step 2 starts. So that's when I'm going to be squeezing my ventricles and raising their pressure. And then the W heard at the bottom when I then relax my ventricles and keep the blood from going back as the pressure drops down. Okay. So again, you don't have to draw all these, but if you can walk yourself through what the graphs would do in each of these steps, my pressure's getting more, my pressure's getting less. That's the kind of understanding of the heart would be good. Ooh, that's not bad. Yeah. Yeah, so the pressure, at this point the muscle constricts the pressure, so make it go. If you just know it's going to go up and down here and here between the 3 steps, okay?
Where does Stirling's law come in on this?
Stirling's law would be right here.
Okay.
So the more blood I can shove in, the more blood I can shove out. So the atria are part of, there's other things that factor that. But Starling's is partly the atria is helping kick in the extra blood. And then next week when we do blood pressure, or maybe we'll do it tonight, then we'll add more to that. Because you can do that other ways, such as exercise will increase Starling's law. You're forcing more blood in, therefore more blood will snap out.
So more stroke volume.
Yep. Stroke volume is the magic word for that, yeah.
So when you were talking about the Starling's law, the more you stretch it, the more it snaps back, the stronger your heart. So if you have a lower heart rate, or does that mean your heart's weaker?
It means your heart's stronger in general. If you have a low heart rate, the idea is I must be snapping back enough that I don't have to beat as often. I'm getting more blood per beat. Therefore, you are starling it better. So Lance Armstrong, in his infamous glory, said his resting heart rate was 35. Liar. Oh, did I say that? Right. The concept being, he could beat half as often as you and pump the same amount of blood. Therefore, I must be able to beat twice as much blood per beat. So the logic is his heart's better. He beats less often, but gets more bang for his buck. So Starling's law is an advantage. The more I can stretch it, the more snapback I get, the more blood I can eject per beat, so I need less beats to eject the same amount of blood, all things being even. Which doesn't mean it. Yeah.
So do the valves make their sounds right at the beginning, right? Like right when
Yeah,
it's
once they
filling,
snap,
it closes and it
Right.
continues to squeeze. So,
Yep.
so if you pointed to where the lub would occur, it's at the top?
Love
right?
would be, love would be
Okay.
basically right there where the pressure climbs.
Okay.
And dub would be basically right there.
Okay.
But there's a slight delay, but it's for this class it's not much of a delay. So let me show you that I'm not making this up much. Here again are our cardiac cycles. So again, we're filling passively and actively. My atrial do systole, so they'd be getting smaller. My ventricles be getting bigger. Then I'm going to squeeze, shut the door, love, eject, open the door, eject the blood. There's my squeezing of my ventricles, ejecting. And then here I am. I shut the back door. I'm getting bigger, so my volume's going down. Pressure's going down. I'm sorry, my volume's going up. My pressure's going down. And then we're going to pull blood in for the next round. So it's the same basic steps you learned on the screen. Another viewpoint of this one, which is right here. This is a static view of all the graphs. So if we go through this one time, so we'll start here. Here's my atria, step 1. That gives me that Starling kick right there. So my ventricles are getting bigger through the open door. This one has the doors. I then begin to contract. The ventricles get smaller. The pressure climbs because I shut the door. Eventually I have to open the next door so blood can eject into my arteries. Then my ventricles relax. I flip-flop the doors. Pressure goes down. And my pressure goes down in my arteries. And then I do it again. And then heart sounds, love, dub. chart can tell, right? I mean, it's only
We have
4
to draw
graphs
that.
instead of 1,000.
Draw
Do
the
we have to
graph?
draw that for you?
No, I'm never gonna ask you to draw it.
What kind of questions should we expect?
Yeah.
What's happening to ventricular volume during the ventricular systole? What valve is doing what in step 1? Those kind of questions. So not the graph per se, but if you understood what would happen in each of these steps to those factors. So what are the valves doing? What are the chambers doing? What's the pressure doing in 1, 2, and 3?
Will you ask us to label the following?
Nope.
What have you? Okay.
I never ask you to label the graphs. I guess I could. Fair enough on that. But there is a graph thou shalt know, which is the next graph we're going to do. So we're going to spend the rest of class dealing with this graph at the top. The electrocardiogram, or the ECG or EKG. Right? To understand EKG, ECG, you can say it either way. It doesn't matter if you use a K like me or a C like other people. Doesn't matter. What we're looking at is this concept. This is showing, fancy word, intrinsic conduction system. English word, built in to my heart wiring. Is literally what this is. So, you may not know this, but your heart has its own wiring system, neurological system, computer system, if you want an analogy. Just like your car has a computer for the motor, your heart has a computer to control it. And that computer's job is to do 1, 2, and 3. Tell the heart when to do 1, when to do 2, when to do 3. Right? Because you want the heart to beat together as a unit. So these are the pathways. And we're going to go to the next screen. Okay, the little bouncy balls are not anatomically correct. Those are representing nerve signals. In 231, what do you call a nerve signal? In red, action potential. So these balls represent action potential, nerve impulse, nerve signal, depolarization. Pick the word you prefer from 231. And the computers, the yellow stuff, is sending signals down to tell the heart when to do these steps. That way everybody does it in order. You want to think of a conductor for an orchestra. Right? You're not playing, you're just telling everyone else when to play. That's what this is doing. So thou shalt know this pathway, thou shalt, and we're going to tie that pathway back to these notes. So let's write down the pathway that you see here. You have to figure out what it has to do with these other 3 steps. So the conduction system. So that again are the wires in the heart, the nerves in the heart. So again, the yellow stuff is what we're talking about. Looking at the little bouncy balls on the screen, can anyone find the yellow thing where they all seem to start? By the way, it's in red on the right-hand side of the screen. The SA node. So your first member of this group is called your SA node, or sinoatrial node, or, if you prefer, the older word was called your pacemaker. I don't care which one you use. What's the job of a pacemaker?
Make it go.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2, right? Its job is to set the pace. So in this little yellow dot up here, decides that it wants your heart to beat, it sends out a signal, a neurological signal impulse, depolarization, action potential, pick a word. And it's going to send it down these pathways to tell the rest of the heart what to do. So the next one, we're going to skip the internodal pathway for today. We're going to go right to the second little bean right there. What's that guy there? The AV node. So the SA node sends a signal to the AV node, usually called the AV node, right? So the pacemaker, number 1, talks to the AV node. We're going to call that number 2. The AV node sends a signal down a bunch of wiring with a bundle of branches. We're going to go right to the end one, the Purkinje fibers. We'll just go right to them. Spell that one 3 times on your checkbook, right?
My goodness.
Purkinje fibers. And if you misspell it, I don't care. But we're going to make this our abbreviated pathway. The SA node is first, goes through some wires. AV node second, goes through some wires. Purkinje fibers is the one at the bottom. And this is the pathway that impulse would take to make your heart do something. So now here comes our part. You got to watch them and try to figure out what the heart does when these signals occur. So let me change the view just slightly. I'm going to this picture here. Oh, hold on. We'll do a static picture first. Picture right here. Okay. So this yellow color here represents the depolarization, the impulse, whatever word you want. So this is my SA node firing. It's the first fire. So what chambers do you think those are up there?
Atrium.
Those are the atrium. What do you think they'll do when the SA node goes?
Squeeze.
Contract or systole. Sure. So the SA node tells the atria to contract. In a normal, healthy heart, when the SA node fires, the atria receive a signal to contract. Wasn't that step one of our 3 steps? Wow. I wonder if there's a connection. Right. So what do you think happens when the AV node fires? What does what?
Ventricles.
How? You caught on. All right. The ventricles will contract. So ventricles contract with our AV node. But before they contract, there's actually a pause. So the AV node is responsible for a pause, and then the Purkinje fibers actually do the ventricles contract. So slightly different than what you thought. All right, which is step 2. So let's do that. I'll go back in the animation, and then we'll watch those little gray balls. And then watch, so again, with all these extra eyes you have floating around, you're going to watch the gray balls, which represent the signal, then watch the chambers. Okay? So my SA node fired first. What did my atria just do? Let's find out. Ooh, what did it just do? They contract. So in a normal healthy heart, when my pacemaker fires, my atria should contract to shove the blood into my ventricles. Okay? Here's my AV node. There's a pause. If you notice that the heart didn't do anything, now it did something. So my Purkinje fibers, my ventricles are told to contract. So atria, ventricle. Atria, pause, ventricle. Right? Or SA, AV, Purkinje. Right? Yes?
So the AV node comes before the lub.
Yes.
Right?
Time-wise, yes. So we did our fill. We did our systole. Who does what to make that happen? We need to relax, right? What do you see happening when we relax? Who's doing what? But what's making it relax? What computer is telling it to relax?
AV and the SA.
Nobody.
Nobody, right? That's the logic, is when they stop firing, then that means you're going to relax. So I'm going to send a signal to say contract. So go, don't go. Go, don't go. And then it relaxes. Right? So what's happening is those when the neurons are recharging. What was that magic word to recharge a neuron from 231? Repolarization. So when I repolarize my nodes, I'm going to then relax my ventricles, or my atria. So let's do that. I'll use black. So, my SA node fired, or depolarized, causing my atria to contract. Look at the balls. When the balls reach the AV node, what do you notice my atria doing? Let's find out. They're repolar because this one's recharging. So the atria would relax in step 2 because the SA node is no longer sending a signal. It sends a signal and then recharges, so I relax. So when would the ventricles relax? After 1, 2, and 3. When the Purkinje fibers are no longer sending a signal, that tells my ventricles to relax. Then I go back up. So even though there's 3 steps here, they don't exactly correlate to the 3 big steps. 1, 2, and 3. Close.
Where's the atria relaxing?
When the Purkinje fibers are going.
Okay.
Because the SA node is relaxing when Purkinje fibers are going. So they're alternating. Right? But wait, there's more. Now we're going to graph it.
You said the ventricles relax after the Purkinje fiber.
Yes. So this graph, I know it's kind of faint. We'll walk through it. Here are the letters your doctor will use, or you if you work in a med-surg unit, will use for doing the EKG. So they use these waves. They start with P because we can't count that. And then these represent something. So each wave on this screen, that's the beep, beep, beep in the hospital, corresponds to one of those computers doing something. So take a look at the P wave. We start with P because, I don't know why. What's it say? It's atrial what? And depolarization is another way to say what? Action potential. And what happens when my atria are receiving an action potential? They're doing what? They're contracting. And who's making them do that? So what do you think P stands for?
Pace.
Pacemaker. So, at the hospital, in the ECG, the P wave of the ECG, EKG, should correspond to my SA node telling my atria to contract in a normal, healthy heart. So the P wave represents the first firing, the first computer, the first bump, the first node, the first impulse. Pick a word you like. Then notice we have a QRS, they're lumped together. What does that correspond to?
The AB,
Depolarization, which is what?
AB, the
AB
pausing.
node and Purkinje fiber. So 2 and 3, both of those steps correspond to QRS. I'm getting a signal, there's a pause, I relax my atria, I fire my ventricles. All of that is the big spike in the middle. So I have my P, QRS. Where's T gonna be?
Relaxing.
Relaxing. That's not the nodes, that's my ventricles recharging. So fill, eject, relax, just like you learned. So the P, QRS, and T correspond to the 1, 2, and 3 you've learned. But they're measuring the computers, not the actual heart. Right? So let me show you how this would work. Now I'll go back and show you another picture. And I'll show you one more. Okay, so again, with your one eye, look at the one picture. With your other eye, look at the other picture. So on the left, we have the wiring in yellow. We have the muscle in gray. So the computers are telling my heart what to do. The doctor would see the little graph on the screen. So a P wave would be when my pacemaker fires. That should tell my atria to contract and fill my ventricles. The QRS should be when I have the pause in the Purkinjes, telling my ventricles to go, sending blood out of my heart. The T wave is when my ventricles relax and nobody's saying anything to anybody. And then I do it again. So P, QRS, T. P, QRS, T. Fill, eject, relax. Fill, eject, relax. Atria, ventricle. And there's 100 ways you can sing this song. Right?
So ejecting is part of the QRS?
Yes.
Okay.
QRS traditionally is the ventricles squirting the blood out. Can anyone guess why the QRS is such a big peak compared to the other ones? Yeah, pressure. Ventricles are huge, right? So the logic is if the big pressure, you need lots of wiring, lots of talking to make them go. Do you have a question?
I did. You already answered it.
All right. So load shoot score or SA, AB, Purkinje, relax, however you want to phrase it. But these are all the electrical systems, the yellow in the graph, the mechanical systems, what the chambers and valves are doing. So the electricity should tell the chambers when to contract, and the blood should go the right way. So this is a weird analogy unless you're a mechanic, but like your car has an electrical system that runs the computer, has the pistons that go up and down. So the computer tells the pistons when to fire. So if a car is working, the computer and the pistons are all in sync. That's what your heart's doing. The computer in yellow is telling the mechanical in gray when to do steps 1, 2, 3, and the valves and all that. So another view, just to show I'm not making this up much. This is correlating the EKG or ECG. So remember, first wave is my P wave. That's my SA node telling my atria to contract. They then relax, and then the ventricles get a signal during the QRS complex, that'd be the AV node in the Purkinjes, telling them to get blood out. As they begin to relax, and nothing's happening, that's my T wave, that tells the ventricles to relax, and that tells the atria, the pacemaker, to restart and do it again. So P, QRS, and T is the electricity going through my heart. Make sense? All right, let me show you one more time. Bring up an animation here for you. Following. All right. I'll take you to a website in just a second. You can go to.
So the SA node, so what is telling the SA node to tells the atria to recharge? What tells the atria to recharge?
That's simply when the pacemaker isn't firing.
Okay.
So let's go through a conduction system of the heart. So
Action potentials originate in the sinoatrial node and travel across the wall of the...
you can say SA, you can say sinoatrial, you can say pacemaker. I'm not worried which word to use. Just don't say AV.
atrium from the sinoatrial node to the atrioventricular node.
Or AV.
Action potentials pass slowly through the atrioventricular node to give the atria time to contract.
That's that pause. If you think about it, we have to let the blood actually get into my ventricles and stretch them if we want to gain any sort of efficiency. So that's why you have this sort of pausing between the 1 and the 2. I got to load them, and then they have to be loaded before they fire again. And we'll talk more about the pause in a little bit.
They then pass rapidly along the atrioventricular bundle, which extends from the atrioventricular node through the fibrous skeleton into the interventricular septum. The atrioventricular bundle divides into right and left bundle branches, and action potentials descend rapidly to the apex of each ventricle along the bundle branches. Action potentials are carried by the Purkinje fibers from the bundle branches to the ventricular walls.
So this is just that wiring to get from the AV node, computer 2, down to where the meat is to contract. By the way, a bundle of discs is another word you'll hear for these, but it's the same thing.
The rapid conduction from the atrioventricular bundle to the ends of the Purkinje fibers allows the ventricular muscle cells to contract in unison, providing a strong contraction.
That's way too fast, but if you follow along the little light, here's my SA node or pacemaker fires first, P wave. It tells the atria to squeeze blood in through the open door. The pause is letting that happen. It's going to go down the wiring to the Purkinjes, right there. That tells the ventricles now to squeeze, push the blood out. So QRS complex. And then when nobody's lit up, you're now in T wave. We're recharging all the batteries, neurons, whatever. And then we do it again. So the electrical system is telling the mechanical system. Make sense? Yes.
So, based on the lights, it looks like maybe there's 2 SA nodes and 1 AV node?
There's actually only one SA node. That's a good question. It has this weird little biology where there's a little extension of it that goes. You'll see this when you get the lab. The heart, the atria are actually side by side on the back of the heart. So the SA node has this little extension that does go to both, but it's still only one node. It just looks on the animation, looks like it makes this trip. It does kind of, but not like that. So it is only one of each node. I was going to say something profound. It just escaped me.
So we have to learn all this for lab in one day?
Eventually you'll have to learn this in lab, yeah.
Oh, okay. So not this week, so.
Pay attention. There's something else I was magic you're going to say. Oh, I know. Okay. Give me a second. Just a dirty little pet topic of mine. I'm allowed. Let's go to Dr. Commando's page. Dr. Commando. There we go. Okay. If you go to Dr. Commando's page of mine, you don't have to necessarily do this. He has a really nice little EKG, ECG is another way to spell it, thing. And the trick is, I'm not a doctor, I'm not even a nurse, I can't diagnose you, but what you want to think about is think about these 3 waves and what would happen if one of them was wrong. That tells the doctor which part of your heart's messed up, right? So let's do that. So here's a normal EKG down here. There's a P right there. QRS is always a big chunk, and a T. P, QRS, T. SA, AV Purkinje, relax, load, shoot, score, however you want to remember it. So this is my normal heart beating. I'm going to do something to you, and we're going to see if we can change the electricity of your heart. Let's try one. Okay, the top one, what's wrong with you?
You're dead.
You are dead. Flat line is dead, right? Your heart is not beating, nothing is on. You forgot to start your car, right? The computer is not firing anything, your heart is not beating anything, right?
Is that VFib?
That would be VFib, that's after VFib, that's after you've died. So VFib is your dying, this is death. Right? But flatline, so you forgot to hook up the machine or you're dead. Right? Okay, try this one on for size. I can't find it. Look at the waves. Is that a normal heart? It is normal.
It's normally slow. for our brain.
Just slow. So here's a P, QRS, and T. There's just a bigger space. So lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Right? So you're bradycardic. You're just slower than normal, but still looks normal. So your heart's beating correctly, just beating less often. Right? The electricity's still okay. Fair enough? Okay, try this one on for size.
Just fast.
It's fast. PQRST is called tachycardia, like a tachometer. They're still there, they're all the right shape and number, it's just it's quicker. Lub-dub, 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 lub-dub. But your computer's firing faster. Pentium 5 versus, a 286 kind of logic. Right? It's just faster. Right? So nothing's wrong with you, just have a fast or slow heartbeat. Now I'm going to make something wrong with you. Can anyone see what's wrong with this person?
Lots.
Does something scream, I'm strange?
Yeah.
What's strange? That's strange. That's really weird, right? That
It's
should
not,
be
it's not snapping back like it should.
So here's my P, here's my QRS, and here's my T. Though that's normal. And then it looks like a kind of a weird QRS anti-negative Q kind of thing, right? Right. So I went normally, and then my heart accidentally fired again, my ventricles. So lub-dub-dub, lub-dub-dub. You got an extra beat. So fancy word is a premature ventricular contraction, or PVC. Your heart is misfiring, just like your car, and sending an extra beat in there. Right? So I'm going along normally, and then my computer fired by mistake a second time. Why would it do that? Why would your heart misfire? Why do your spark plugs misfire?
There's something with the SA node.
There's something wrong with my nodes, like an infection or a fever. Or you had too much coffee today. Caffeine's a stimulant, will make your heart misfire. Right? Methamphetamine, right? Nicotine. So every morning when you have your coffee, you probably throw a PVC. Your heart gets excited. The nerves overfire. That should go away. If it's every day, every time, that's bad, because that means your heart's always excited, which usually means something is irritating it. Right? That's a PVC. That's fine. This is not fine.
That's VFib.
That's VFib, yeah. Can you find any waves in there?
No.
There's nothing, right? So what are your nodes doing if the waves are all over the map? They're just firing whenever, right? Random, some kind of like weird, chaotic jazz kind of thing. So if they're not firing in a rhythm, what are my chambers doing?
Not.
Filling.
They're trying to fire randomly. For this to work, right, it's 1, 2, 3. So here, everybody's playing their own song, and so you're not getting any blood going anywhere. So we have to beat as a unit. This is also called VFib, or a heart attack, or you're dying. Right? So what do the EMTs do if you're in VFib on every show? Shock you. So the goal of the defibrillator is to kill you. Bam. Right? I stop your heart, and after the next commercial break, it's supposed to come back magically as a regular rhythm. So on your computer, right, when you get the blue screen of death, you call the guy with the accent, he says what?
Restart.
Reboot, right? That's what you did here. Your heart was blue screen of death. You rebooted by turning it off. I killed you. And then you're hoping it reboots normally. That's what a defibrillator is supposed to do, is try to reboot your heart. Right? But once you're flatline, you can't reboot. You're dead. I can't reboot a dead computer. I can only reboot a blue screen of death. So there's a difference. You see it on those shows, right? They flatline, they shock them. That's my pet peeve. Flatline, you bury them. Right? You shock them. There's nothing to reboot if it's unplugged. Right? Logically speaking. But again, I'm not going to quiz you on the nuances of different rhythms as long as you understand that the waves tell you what the heart's doing. If I know my QRS is screwed up, something's wrong with my ventricles eventually. Because QRS tells my ventricles what to do. Right? Here's a PAC. Oh, darn it. Ah! Of course he doesn't have it. Right? We do digitalis. Digitalis makes this little wave funny looking. So a doctor could look at your EKG and say, hey, you're eating digitalis. It's going to make the waves change, which affects how the heart beats. That the computer is changing its structure. Make sense? Here's one. Anyone see what's wrong with that one? It says 2-to-1 heart block. Anyone know what that means?
Something with the T.
Right here.
Oh,
What do you
right there.
see?
The T wave isn't, there's two T's.
There's 2
Oh.
P's actually. So it took like 2 times for the heart to get the message to go. So the pacemaker said now, no now, and then finally the heart fired. So it took 2 P's to make the heart do its job. So the pacemaker's singing twice to get the orchestra to play once. So 2-to-1. There's 3-to-1, all these things. Right? But again, a doctor would look at that and say, hey, you shouldn't have 2 P's, you should have 1 P, and 1 QRS, and 1 T. So something's odd about you. Make sense? But that's measuring the computer system of the heart. So if you understood that, which I think you did, said you did, fires. Let me go back to the animation I was showing you for real. We're going to take a little teeny quiz. Remember this? Let's go to our quiz. Okay, it's going to tell me to do a left bundle branch block. Say that 8 times fast. That means I'm going to fry out your wire on the left side. I clicked it. So I burned out your wire, lost circuit board, whatever analogy you want to use, on the left side of your heart. What do you notice about the little gray balls when I fry the wiring? They slow down. Right? If you burn out your wiring in your computer, the signals are slower because they can't travel as fast, right? They have to ooze through the cells. So when I fry out my wiring, quote, quote, my heart is now going to beat slower because it's hard to get the computer signal to the muscles that do the job, right? So what do you think the EKG would look like if you put this patient on it? Let's find out. It's kind of hard to see. Let's go through this. To give you a reference, this is normal. P, QRS, T. These 2 are abnormal. Which of those abnormalities represents that person?
Wow.
You sure?
Yep.
Yeah, how'd you know?
Because
It takes longer, which means the wave would do what? Stretch out, right? Time-wise. So it's taking longer for the signal to go through my busted wiring, and therefore my graphs begin to widen, right? So in lab, we do your EKG, which I think is, Monday. You want nice tight peaks, because the wider the peaks, the more slowly the wiring is, which is not good. A slow heart's fine, slow wiring is not. Right? It's like doing dial-up on your phone, kind of thing. Right? It's not going to work well.
So would the top one be no SA?
Correct. So what would the doctor do for this poor patient who doesn't have a P wave? Give him a pacemaker, because you don't have a pacemaker. Or at least it's not firing right. You still have a heart beating. The AV node and all those things are working, just your pacemaker didn't fire. So,
What causes that to not work?
genetic, some is congenital, can be infections, you just lost the nerve tissue, function, and death. But you can live without the first one because we can live without atria. They just help kick the heart. We can't live without ventricles. The ventricles eject the blood. So losing your pacemaker is lousy, losing your ventricles is dead. So, there is a difference there. Makes sense? But again, you can tell from the EKG, this isn't right, that's not right. far as you need to go with that in mental exercise. Okay. There are pages online for future nursing students that go through all the different types of EKGs you can have. Okay. But I'm happy with that. Make sense? Because now we're going to go a little more detail. And so that wasn't enough, right? Now we're going to figure out actually how the heart cells actually do that. How do they actually make a signal? So remember, here's our wiring, our intrinsic conduction system. Okay? And here's a picture of a relationship between the yellow things you saw on the prior screen, the computer, the wiring, pick your word, and these things from 231. Can someone remind me what these were from 231? Cardiac muscle cells, right? Skeletal muscle from the heart. So if you remember, intercalated discs, single nucleus, lots of lines, right? So in English, this is the cell, that's the yellow cell, it's the computer. These are the cells that are going to respond when the computer sends a message. They're going to contract. So we have what they call the autorhythmic cell and the contractile cell. They have a relationship. So we're going to put them on the board and start learning about the relationship between an autorhythmic and a contractile cell. Because we're going to make a bunch of graphs of chemistry. I know you love that stuff. So on this board, we're going to be doing the autorhythmic cells on this board and contractile cells over there. So over here, we'll do autorhythmic. By the way, what does autorhythmic mean?
Self-firing.
Self-firing. So worthless trivia for a cocktail party, the heart wiring can beat on its own. It sets its own rhythm. So it just comes up with one. You can influence it with your brain, but it has its own sort of system. The autorhythmic cells, you can think of these as the nodes. So the nodes that we learned in the last 10 minutes are basically autorhythmic cells. They set a pace. They set the tone. Right? The contractile cells, which we're going to put over here, so contractile, those are muscle cells. That's the meat of the heart. So back before political correctness, we used to call this master and slave. The master's over there telling the slave what to do over here, right? You can still use that in mechanics, master cylinder, slave cylinder. But the concept is the yellow one's going to tell the red ones when to do their job. Right? Let's do that. Click an autorhythmic cell to see the wave of depolarization. I love that. Woo! So, humor me and tell me that you remember from 231 what the pluses and minuses with neurons was about.
Yes.
Someone say sodium.
Sodium.
Someone say potassium.
Potassium.
Remember that you depolarize, you become positive on the inside, right? Your graph went up, and then the potassium left and the graph went down. You're measuring the internal membrane. Or just lie and say you remember. So if you remember, depolarization was flipping the charge, and then you repolarize, you go back to the charge, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to depolarize and repolarize the autorhythmic cell, and that's going to cause the muscle cells to follow the order and depolarize and repolarize. What do muscles do when you depolarize them? They contract. Remember that from 231, that acetylcholine crud? They're going to relax. So the autorhythmic cell will do something to tell the muscle cells when to do their thing. And now here comes the harder part. This picture. Hey, this is 112. What was this funny-looking phospholipid thing? What was that all about?
Cell membrane.
Cell membranes. That's a membrane around my nodes. Hey, we got channels. What did channels do? Let stuff in and out. Hey, we have a sodium channel. That should ring a bell from 231. A potassium channel. That should ring a bell. Calcium channel, which probably rings no bells. Right? So let's go through it. So we're going to cause an action potential or a nerve impulse, or what word you want, in an autorhythmic cell. So it's going to tell me, click a sodium channel. If I click a sodium channel, what do you think will happen? What will go where?
Sodium goes in.
Sodium should go in, because that's what we learned in 231. So that is indeed what's going to happen. So let's click it. Woo! Yay! That's exciting. Ha ha! So let's do that. Number one. Sodium enters the cell. The autorhythmic cell is what we're talking about on this board. How to get into the cell?
Sodium channel.
Through a sodium channel, or I'll use Na channel, just so you get it. You'll sometimes hear this called ion channels, or sodium gates, or pick a word, I'm not too particular. But sodium is going to enter my cell, and then if you notice our graph from 231, remember that graph, or zero, negatives, we're gaining pluses, so our graph goes up. We're becoming less negative, right? So our graph's going to go up because we're making the inside less negative or more positive. Right? So what should happen next? Let's try that. Ooh, let's tell me to click a calcium channel. Ooh, that's new. So let's write that. That's not 231 anymore, Dorothy. All right. So calcium, which way did the calcium go? In. Also enters the cell. How? Through a what?
Calcium channel.
Calcium channel, or fast calcium channel, or pick a word you like. Right? And together, 1 and 2 made my graph go way, way up. So 1 and 2 become depolarization. You can't see it on the screen. But when I do 1 and 2, I've depolarized my autorhythmic cells. The graph went up to positive something. Now, we're going to do step 3, which is the one you were thinking of last time. What should happen in step 3? Who should go where? Potassium should go what?
Out.
Out, or leaves, I guess, if I'm doing the verb. And how's it going to get out? Potassium channel. And what are you going to call that? Repolarization. Let's see if that's true. Potassium channel, we're doing good. Hey, potassium's leaving. And I repolarized, meaning I went back to my starting voltage. Remember your 231, the sodium potassium pump would sit there and reset the ions, and you're off and running. All right? So let's do those again. Sodium in, right? And calcium in. I've depolarized my neuron or my autorhythmic cell, and then potassium out to repolarize my autorhythmic cell. You make the action potential graph that you learned in 231. So far, so good? Now, we're going to slide over to the contractile cells, the muscle cells. You notice at the bottom left, that looks like a funny looking tube. Cap junction, which is part of the intercalated disc. Why would I need a tube there? Right. Allows stuff to go back and forth. So we're going to take something from my autorhythmic cell and send it over to my muscles so they get the message of what to do. Let's see what it might be.
Calcium?
I don't know. Could it be? Maybe? Oh, it's sodium and calcium. So let's do that as step number 1. In my contractile cell, sodium and calcium enter the cell from where?
Gap junction.
From the gap junction from what cell? From the autorhythmic cell. So in your notes, if you wanted to, you could draw an arrow from step 1 and 2 over here and send those ions over there, because it's the same 2 ions. But I can't do it behind the screen. But I'm going to take sodium and calcium from my autorhythmic cell, and that's going to enter my contractile cell. And that's what's going to be the threshold from 231. That's kind of what's going to start threshold. It's going to tell my cell now. Right? Let's do that. I've gotten my message from my boss. There's the NA and CA. Now I got to start doing my job. It says click a sodium channel. I wonder what will happen if I click a sodium channel. Let's find out. Hey, I know this graph. This is easy. Step number 2. So now sodium will enter the cell, How's it getting in the cell? How's this sodium getting in?
By
Through what?
channel.
Through sodium channel. So instead of just zipping on in through the gaps, we actually rush in through the channel, just like over there. So now, I wonder what's next.
Calcium channels.
Calcium, and look, it's blinking. How good. Here we go. You're wrong. Let's do that again. Let's do that again, because you're so wrong. Or you're kind of half wrong. What happened? So here comes our step 3. We're going to do it in bright red. Step 3. Calcium did go in. The green, yep, calcium came